Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Constine from TechCrunch, and thank you guys so much for coming out. There's so many beautiful things you could be doing, but we're really excited to get to all be here for something that I think can hopefully help everyone's business and help everyone understand some of the crazy shifts that are going on in the consumer behavior and marketing world right now. So the original plan for this was to do an online survey with everyone filling it out right now. Wi-Fi and internet, as you can expect, is not quite working out here in the middle of the forest. So instead, as we go through the panel, we're going to ask for a show of hands from you guys about a few questions, and then we'll be discussing the results as part of the panel. So basically, for a quick intro, I've been the editor at large for TechCrunch for about 3 years. I've been there almost 6 years now. Before that, I did a master's in cyber sociology at Stanford, where I was studying how people interact over the internet, how people get to make relationships, how people figure out what they care about, how they divide into their niches, anonymity, memes, privacy, trolling. But in the years since, I've really been focusing on how social technology is allowing people to market and grow their businesses. And so that's everything from social networks, but also a big shift around experiential culture, which is actually offline. One of the biggest things I've learned about online marketing and online connection is that it's not everything. There's so much to be done in person, and I think this weekend is an incredible exhibition of that. So we'll introduce the rest of the panelists in just a moment, but I wanted to give some thoughts about where the state of consumer behavior is right now. So we're in the middle of a massive shift from the materialistic culture to an experiential culture. People want memories, not possessions. And nobody ends up on their deathbed, shouting, "All those things I could have owned." It's all the things I could have done. That's like what people really care about. And there are a lot of trends that are contributing to this shift. We now have mobile devices with sharp cameras where we can capture experiences. We have fast mobile broadband networks and social networks where we can share these experiences. Meanwhile, a lot of our most prized possessions have been digitized. The things that we cared about and that we saw as defining our identity, things like record collections or our photo albums, have all become digitized, and it's not really about ownership anymore. And so people are looking for other ways to exhibit what their identity is. And there's also been the mainstream rise of things like yoga and meditation, which are giving people a lot more clarity about the world around them and what really matters. Meanwhile, income inequality has come into focus, and I think that's made some of the ostentatious luxury items and possessions less in vogue in certain circles. Meanwhile, there's been a new rise in some special values in society, like authenticity and novelty. What we call hipster culture is actually the result of when a dominant subculture, or rather than being the dominant subculture sticking to a certain style or set of music or clothes, instead we're constantly churning through new styles, basking in the perceived authenticity of being the first to do something and soaking up all the novelty before moving on to something different. And we've seen this in style and music with from the mid-2000s, where we had Daft Punk and MGMT and neon clothes giving way to flannel and Arcade Fire and Fleet Foxes. We had that kitschy era with everyone wearing like foxtails and stuff on their belts with like Alt J and Vampire Weekend. Then we went on to that ratchet EDM phase in the early aughts with like Diplo and Skrillex. And now I think we're sort of settling into this minimalist all black outfit, the XX, Disclosure, Berlin house music. And you can see how this is one culture that's constantly shifted through all these other subcultures in search of authenticity and novelty, because I think people really want something that they can experience and that's new and that's memorable, rather than something that they put on a shelf forever. And I think that's really exhibited in the outdoor brands and the things that we're seeing here, where it's not about having a cool water bottle sitting on your shelf, it's about having it on your belt when you actually living with it. Simultaneously, we've seen an explosion of things like music festivals, where people seek the most experiential and unique one-time exhibitions of an art, rather than seeing the same concert with the same set list played in a similar dark room in a different city all around the country. People want to be at the place where it's unique and different. We've also seen things like vinyl sales rise as people really grab onto the rich authenticity of that old sound and the sort of novelty of owning something, but then quickly that novelty wore off and we've actually seen vinyl sales start to dip off again. And we've seen things like Airbnb blow up because people want an Instagrammable experience experience. They want a thing that they can remember, even if it's less convenient, as long as it's quaint and special. That's what people really care about. And we've also seen the rise of things like Polaroid cameras and digital detox retreats, things not unlike this. I've actually been to a digital detox retreat right here from a group called Camp Grounded, where people just throw away their phones for the weekend because we're just so addicted to them, and we want something where we remember it rather than remembering it through our screens. And perhaps most importantly, though, for commerce is that we've seen this shift to the on-demand culture. And people are realizing that their one finite resource is time, and they're willing to pay to get it back. Uber, Instacart, Postmates, and possibly most importantly, Amazon, see people happily pay more or get locked into an ecosystem to get where they want or what they want right now. And so fundamentally, I think Amazon's disruption of a wide swath of commerce hasn't necessarily been about technology or even logistics prowess, though those are massively important to its success. I think it's really about understanding this trend of what people want, which is their time back, and giving it to them, because that's really the core of customer satisfaction. And so those are some of the topics we're going to get in today. And so thank you guys all so much for coming here. I'd love to let our panelists each introduce themselves, tell a little bit about what your role is and what your company does and what the feeling behind the company is, rather than just sort of what you sell, but what is the feeling you sell?
Sure. Hi, my name is Adam Lewis, and I'm the founder of Foghorn Labs. We are a online marketing consultancy that focuses on outdoor and active lifestyle brands. We really help basically brands that sell direct to consumer online. We help them grow traffic, improve their website experience, and sort of measure all of the parts of it. So we really we're all about sort of marketing what we know and working with brands that we care about and we have we feel like a true kind of connection to. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
Cool.
Yeah.
Hey y'all, what's up?
Hello.
Get excited, it's cool.
Yeah.
We're all friends, here. Help me break the ice, I'm a little nervous. I'm Sarah Romero. I work at G7 Entertainment Marketing in Nashville, where we focus on the power of the fan. And we translate the power of the fan through a few different verticals, one being brand activation at music festivals, pop-up events, etc. The second being talent booking for different conferences, B2B or B2C. And we also do brand strategy focused in entertainment, which is really where I fall under the guise of that. So glad to be here.
Hey, I'm Phil Otto. My company's Otto Design Group. We do retail concepts, been doing that for a while. Similar to Josh, I got out of Stanford with a degree in the social sciences, cultural anthropology. Your category didn't exist yet.
And they said we'd never be employed.
Exactly. And it's exactly
and
right.
I hardly am now.
Yeah, well, there you go. I'm busy. The idea of who's the audience, what's the lifestyle, what's the culture, I get hired by cities now just to do nothing but that. Sometimes, like friends at REI will hire me to look at the store experience. For Warby Parker, we did a pop-up shop downtown LA that's become semi-permanent. So the scale for us has become pop-up to civic. The activities are from customer profile to what's the space going to look like, what are the goals for the space. We've I was talking to these guys about, made a decision to just admit that we are very locked into the built piece. We push towards what a lot of the marketing and agency people do, but we're very respectful of their work and just want to overlap with that, but stay in our world of building shit. It's what we like to do. So.
Hey, my name is Hua, David Hua. I'm the CEO of Meadow. Meadow builds software in the cannabis industry. We build software for the consumer where they can order on demand and get cannabis delivered in an hour or less. And if you don't have a card, then you can get an evaluation online with one of our doctors as well. For businesses, we build their whole point of sale solution, back end, compliance, and operational processes. When it comes to the cannabis and what Meadow's doing, we really want to normalize it, make it accessible, and layer it in everyone's lives, depending on whatever they're into.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Dowd. I work for REI, and I lead a few teams of people that help and create the physical expression of the brand. So we do everything from experiences to stores to pop-ups and any physical expression. That's what the teams that I have the benefit of leading do. And at REI, we believe that the outdoors is healing, and it's a place of wellness. And we want to be that place where it takes all boundaries away, so you can get into and enjoy the outdoors for everyone. So that's what REI does.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. One thing I'd just like to commend Outpost on is that we have such an awesome mix of people on this panel, including some awesome women on this panel. There's far too many tech conferences where there's not women involved in the leadership or on the speakers of the panel. So just big ups to Outpost.
Right.
So I want to get you guys involved. I want to know, just to kick things off, what is it that, or I want you to think of your favorite brand. Think of the brand that you love most. And then I want you to think, what is the most memorable part of your experience with that brand? Was it, I'm going to ask for a show of hands in a second, but was it like a piece of traditional marketing, like a commercial or television advertisement or billboard that like you really remember that sticks in your mind? Is it like a time you got a free product or like an awesome demo or some kind of trial of it, or something, basically getting like a product for free? Or is it some kind of experience that you had, whether it was like a sponsorship of an event or an event they threw, or something like that? Just love to get a show of hands. So maybe everyone just, maybe close your eyes for a second, envision that brand that you like see as part of your identity, and then think, what is it that when you think about that brand, what is it you remember? Is it some product experience that you had? Is it some like experience that you had with the brand, or is it some piece of more traditional marketing? So if it was a piece of traditional marketing, a beautiful video or an awesome magazine ad or something, raise your hand. Cool. So we have a few people. What about like a product or something that you got for free, or something like experience that you've had personally with the product itself that really like gives you that moment? A fair amount of people. That's great. And then what about like an experience, some kind of sponsorship, some kind of event they threw, something like that? Awesome. Cool. So I think what I saw in the hands there is that the traditional marketing is not resonating with people quite the same way, because there are just so many channels to reach people through now. And also we just have so much more exposure to media because of the internet that channel is just very noisy. There's a lot going on there. I think people, when they develop a real experience with a product, it can be awesome, and it's more traditional of what we think of, like, oh, I ran this 5K in these shoes and I love them, and now I like always think of that brand. But really, I'm seeing a lot of people thinking about that experience, that that thing which isn't necessarily just the brand or just you using the product, but something that aligned with that the identity of that brand, and that you really remember. And I think we're going to see more and more of a shift from that traditional media and that product focused stuff to those experiences thing. And I'd love to ask the panelists, was there a moment, like an aha moment, when you really saw, some of these big consumer behavior shifts, where you recognized them, whether it was in person when you were delivering a campaign, or at an event you were throwing, or in the store, or working with your client, where you said, "Wow, there's something really different going on here." Maybe you could tell us like that anecdote. Anyone can go in any order.
I can go.
Sure.
I think personally for me, REI is a really big organization, so I'm constantly trying to convince them to do things that will probably take them a long time to do. So I think there's a lot of smaller things that I could say, but I think one of the biggest shifts that we were really nervous about was when we did Opt Outside, and we closed all our stores and continue to close them all on the Friday after Thanksgiving. And it was like, it was a pretty scary thing. I was on actually the very first team that went off site and tried to come up with all these ideas, and that idea came up during that outing. And so that to me was, one, we didn't know how the consumer was going to react, and the consumer reacted very well. But not only that, when they announced it at a leadership conference, and we brought every single store manager in, and all the leadership team from our headquarters, and they did this big reveal, and there was only a very small team of people that actually knew this was happening, and we kept it really, really secretive, and we did this huge reveal at this leadership conference. I mean, I would say 30% of the store managers were in tears. They had never had a Friday after Thanksgiving off, many of them in 25 years, and it was just to see that impact on employees, because everybody knows what it's like to be employed, especially a long-term employee. They're more jaded, I would say, and the movement that they felt, how moved they felt as individuals, was unbelievable. And at that moment, because you could just feel the emotion in the room, I knew the way they reacted, at that moment I knew that, like, oh, this is going to go really well. Like, because just the impact it had.
That's awesome. I think that really embodies this idea of like that trickle down feeling where if you make the people working in your company be really happy and really believe in the morals of a brand, they're going to pass that on to the customer. And as we're seeing it being like the buying experience is so important now, especially when so many people buy things with just like a one click online. When you actually are talking to someone in person and can get that advice, if they're happy, if they're like charged up about a brand, they're going to do such a better job of selling it. So I think that's a brilliant way that you guys have catalyzed that. Cool. Anyone else?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting the point you bring up, because that's inherently how G7, our agency, was formed, is understanding, like I said, the power of that fan and seeing the fans. I mean, I've probably seen you or your friends at festivals or concerts, right? I mean, that passion, that electricity, that emotion, Elizabeth, like you were talking about, that comes from the consumer is really electric. And so we saw that as a company, and we're like, hey, there's something really fun here in music that we can capitalize on and partner with brands to really expand their business and give the consumer that touch point, that really different experience that they might not get anywhere else. For quick background, I used to work at the Country and Music Association, and we put on a festival every year in Nashville, as well as the award show in November. And something I found there as we were working with brands is we'd create these experiences. And as we'd go through, year after year, we would overhear fans referring to a stage as not the stage, but, oh, Chevy. We're going to go, the Chevy stage, we're going to go over there. Or, hey, we're going to go to the Big Lounge over here. They knew inherently that brand associated with that experience. So that was something too that kind of catapulted that passion for music and brands and creating that electric experience.
That's really cool. It's like if you can so deeply align yourself where you're not really just being tacked on to a big event, but you're really embedded in like the way that people talk about it, the way they experience it. I think that goes a long way. And it can be kind of cheesy when you see like, like AT&T Park in San Francisco, like them just sort of slapping their brand on it. But I think that there's ways that you're describing where you can feel like you're really part of the event, and it makes it people easier. Like personally, if there's like a giant Chevy logo and like a car on the stage at a music festival, I'm going to remember that's the Chevy stage a lot better than I'm going to remember that's like the Panhandle stage at Outside Lands, where it's like, wait, which one is that? Is that the one way over there? And it can actually be easier to remember and easier to experience that event if you have those brand markers. So that's really cool. What are you guys?
I'm not sure if I'm going to answer the question because
that's fine. We're outside. You can really do whatever the hell you want.
Because I started the company ages ago, like 1990 after college, and I don't think our consumer stuff has changed. I never liked stores the way they were, and so my first projects were just for friends, and it was like we got this much money, we found an abandoned space, we're going to do a store, and I'm like, well, let's not do a store. Let's do a place we want to be, and then we'll layer in the store piece of it later. And that led to our first national account was Urban Outfitters, and there I had a client who was just looking to be cheap, so that was typical indie projects, and the audience I knew really wanted it just to be this stripped down loft, so I was like, why are we spending all this money on architectural gestures and all that? How stripped down can we be? How little permit process? Let's put the money into how we approach that space. And I'd just finished my art school career and in professional practice where we overlap. This was an earlier professional practice course I was teaching, but the guy teaching it was like Cork Marcheski at the Art Institute in San Francisco. Said almost nobody who goes to art school even has a remotely creative career. He had some percentage, like 1%. He might have made it up, I don't know. But it was less than 1% according to Cork that moment. And I thought, that's sad. At least you should be able to go off and do something. And then when I started doing spaces, I was like, God, I should get all my art school buddies and we'll just go in and do stuff because we can build our own fixtures. We don't have to use catalogs. So started inventing systems like that there is an art school army, that you do invent fixtures as a part of the program. And that just, has kept going. All of our clients, that's pretty much how we approach it. Like, what's the culture? What's the audience? Let's do a space we all want to be in. Let's build systems that are unique to this project and have some feedback loops in them so we can keep learning. So I think all of our spaces, end of the day, are just super adaptable.
That's great. So you're way ahead of this trend then.
I guess, or I just didn't know any better, and I just was listening to people that were trying to do stuff.
No, it totally makes sense. So it's like if you build the experience first and layer the commerce on top of it, people are going to want to be there whether they want to buy the stuff or not, and they're going to end up buying the stuff. And meanwhile, it's like if you focus on that uniqueness rather than the like comfort and the standard of like what is a store supposed to look like? It's like, well, if you make it look like that, no one's going to take a picture of it because they've been there before. But if you make it something really different, you're going to want to be there. It's a special experience. I remember when I was in Berlin, I went to an artist co-op that was in like a flooded, broken out warehouse. Like the doors were all gone. It was just like crumbling concrete, and like literally some of the studios and little like shops so I could have like water on the floor. But the stuff they were selling there was so cool, and I remembered it so much that I wanted mementos just from that place. So I bought t-shirts, I bought a necklace, and the person was like, oh, it's like €5. I was like, I'm going to pay you €15 because this is just way cooler. You cannot be possibly making money on this, but I like love this whole experience so much. I want to pay you more because I just want you to like continue being an artist. And I think you can foster those experiences when you do that.
I'm going to jump in real quick and touch on both of those points, but I think it all relates to authenticity. You know, talking about consumer behavior, and consumers are smart, right? They understand, like if you see a Chevy logo somewhere where it may not make sense, or if you see an REI logo somewhere where it may not make sense, the consumer's like, why are they here? How is this enhancing my experience? So I think it's really understanding that authenticity of who you're talking to and who your audience is to create those unique experiences that's customized to your fan, to your audience, to whomever you may be talking to.
David, you got an anecdote?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been smoking since high school. Anyone here have been smoking?
Me too.
Since 12.
So
All
we're gonna meet like over there, like
right.
10
We
minutes,
all
right?
are
Great,
friends,
perfect.
right?
The panel's at least 30 more minutes, but yes, we are.
Yeah.
35 minutes.
You know, I think you guys all remember how difficult it was to get quality cannabis
So
and
ridiculous.
the hoops that you would jump through.
Dude, he said he would be here at 2. It's only 8. Like he's still coming.
It's
I
like
promise.
Comcast, right? And so for us, that anecdote kind of happened when we ordered cannabis. It wasn't really that great, and we decided to build something where you could just push a button and get it. There were a couple big trends that kind of like ignited that. One was California has had legal cannabis now for 20 years. I've had a card for about 6. Sanjay Gupta came out on CNN and did this whole special, which broke open the door for me and my mom, actually. I was like, okay, check this out.
Everybody trusts Sanjay.
He's a doctor, right? I think that was big. And then anyone from Colorado, I mean, Colorado really set it off with the adult use market. And, you know, we could see more people being accepting of it. We could see people that are coming out of the closet, as we would say, to their friends and their family. And then we saw a lot of the medicinal benefits. So we kind of jumped on that trend, and being in San Francisco, we wanted the convenience and, you know, the ability of getting that, you know, easier without waiting forever.
That's awesome. Cool. So I want to kick it back out to the audience for a second. So I want to ask you about like when you're choosing an experience, a commerce experience, what is the most important thing to you? So I'm going to read off a few choices, and then I want you guys to raise your hand for the one that you think is the most important after we run through them once. So those options are having the lowest prices, having fast and cheap or free shipping, having the widest selection, having intuitive navigation, or really like having an easy to navigate store, whether that's online or offline, having accurate recommendations, whether that's by an algorithm or like some clerk who's been doing it for 20 years, or having like great customer service maybe after the purchase and making sure everything works awesome. So I'd love to hear you guys, just with a quick raise of hands, like which one of those things really resonates most with you in a commerce experience. So maybe like first, lowest prices. That's telling. Oh, we got one hand. I appreciate your honesty. Then there's like fast and cheap or free shipping or like really convenient acquisition of it. That is a lot of hands. People care about that a lot. What about having like the widest selection, never having to go to some other place? So that's something that surprised me. I only have one hand. That's something that I would have thought people really care about, but really I think it looks like curation is more important. What about having like intuitive navigation or like a great store design style? Yeah, that's really important to people because it's like when it feels easy and when it's when that commerce part of it actually fades out of the spotlight and it becomes kind of invisible. It's just you and the brands, and I think that's a lot more of a satisfying experience. What about like accurate recommendations and people who like really know their stuff? That's awesome. I think that's a great part of it, and it's sad seeing a lot of that like disappear from some of the commerce experiences as we move online or as we trust more in algorithms. Like, there's this amazing video store in San Francisco called Lost Weekend Video, and it's like everybody there has been working in video for like 20 years plus, and like you can be like, listen, I had a shitty day, so I need a movie where a bunch of people die, but I want it to be funny because I'm not like that depressed and weird. Like, but I also like got to go to sleep, so it needs to be like 90 minutes or less. And they're like, I got you, and they know exactly what to do, and it's so amazing. But it's like, nobody rents DVDs anymore ever since Apple took the disk drive out of Apple laptops, and so now they moved into the like Alamo Drafthouse movie theater, and they're just like in their lobby. They don't even have their own store, and that like experience is kind of waning. So it's great to see people still really care about that. And then finally, like great customer service. I think that's also super popular. People really want to know that whatever they buy, they're going to be happy at the end, whether they like get rid of it or return it or I don't know if you guys ever had that magical experience where you buy something from Amazon and it's like broken or it's not right, and like you ask them like, oh, I want to return it, and they're just like, fuck it, keep it. Like, we don't even care. We'll just send you a new one. And it's like, that's customer service. I love that. So yeah, I think those things are also really important to people. So yeah, I would love to hear from you guys. What is one of these major shifts or one of these like major values of customer service, and how have you changed your business to really adapt to it? How have you said like, this is something that we need to prioritize and make our business work for?
I'll kind of just jump in there real quick. I think for music specifically, that's a really interesting question. And again, I think I'm going to go back to that authenticity of the consumer experience. I mean, imagine yourself at a festival, right? Like Bonnaroo, for example. Let's use Bonnaroo, for example. One of the best activations I think I've seen was Garnier. They built a hair washing station. And I was like, shit, yeah. I need my hair washed. And that was a perfect brand activation. Why? Because it touched on the need of the consumer that was there. And it was smart, and it was tailored, and it was a need that the consumer had, the fan had. And Garnier was able to leverage that passion that the fan had to be there in sweltering heat in the middle of a forest, actually it's not a forest, it's a field, listening to music for days on end. And they're like, hey, that's an opportunity. We're going to take that fan passion, and we're going to give them a service customized to them.
That's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree. I had one of my favorite brand experiences ever with a car insurance company, and I'm like, how the hell did that even happen? Like, I don't care about car insurance. Like, yeah, it's something I have to have, but I like really don't want to even think about it. But at Coachella a few years ago, State Farm was running shuttles from the campgrounds to the gate. And if you've ever been there, it's like a 20-minute walk in like sweltering heat. And of course, like your other friend was always like too late trying on their different outfits and like figuring out what they want to wear. So you're like, oh my God, I really want to get to this set and we're not going to make it. We like might get the last song. And then like State Farm shows up. They're like, jump in our little like car and drive to the front of the gate and like see more of the set. And that was like an amazing experience. That was like, it wasn't necessarily like, oh, we're going to give you like a discount on car insurance or like teach you about car insurance. So we're just like, we're going to do something with cars that makes you feel happy and convenient. And like, that was awesome. It doesn't have to be right on the money. It can just be like in that general atmosphere or ecosystem, and it'll feel really good.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of like direct sort of direct to consumer or direct interaction, albeit not as exciting as maybe cannabis delivery. We work with a lot of brands who are selling direct to consumer, and there's a lot of challenges for them to compete with the customer service and sort of return policies of like an REI or the expediency of an Amazon. And so a lot of them, the challenge is to interact directly with the end customer, but also to provide a similar or maybe a better experience. And it's really hard. And so they kind of have to hit on all these different areas. They may not have quite the fastest shipping, but like maybe they'll talk to someone directly who's with the brand, and you'll have that direct connection with the brand that you might not be able to get through an Amazon or through a backcountry. And then there's the shipping components and all these different pieces. But I think for brands to try to create this customer experience, they have to kind of hit on all these areas really well. And I think in the end of the day, a lot of people do like the option of buying directly through brands, but they have to do it really well, because otherwise there's so many options out there, so many alternatives that are just so compelling. So that's one of the challenges that we've run into, a huge shift of brands wanting to go direct, but the equal equally challenging sort of just piece of how do you make that how do you compete with these bigger companies.
Totally. If you want to go direct, you have to like be in the right place at the right time, which can be really difficult because you're often dealing with a bunch of like incumbent players that are trying to box you out purposefully.
So I'll talk a little bit about, I think at REI, I feel like my observation has been that the best thing we can do is go back to who we were originally, and any time that we've gone too far away from that, we fucked up. And we were started by a group of friends, 25 climbers, and they just wanted to get really good, cheap, really quality climbing gear at a good price. And it was pretty a shelf in a gas station, right? So the farther we went away from that feeling, the worse it was for our brand. And so I feel like we are always constantly trying to get back to that place. And one example of customer service in particular is about 7 years ago, if you go in any of our stores, there's a green vest that'll help you out. And there was this big thing in the retail organization, to say like, hey, we just want to, let's not hire the bicyclist, let's not hire the skier, let's not hire the climber, let's just hire somebody that knows how to sell shit. And they can sell it really well, and they can like fold t-shirts at the same time, and they're not going to like go off about their latest camping trip for 25 minutes. And we did that for a couple of years, and we hired all these people that were from Banana Republic and The Gap, and they knew how to sell, and it was a big mistake. And so now it's like going back to, we just need to hire people that love to be in the outdoors, and that love is going to show up.
I always buy more because of that.
Yeah, right.
I'm like, I
Yeah.
got everything but the thing I can't.
Yeah. I think as any organization, you have to really feel and know who you are and what makes you special and stick to it. And I know from experience being there for over 10 years that any time that we've gone away from that, we've regretted it.
Totally. Yeah, if any of you guys have like other mistakes that you've made in this realm as well, that's also super useful.
I can do mistakes.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that.
Yeah, I feel like I'm on my 4th or 5th career within the same company. Every time we think we know what we are, then it slows us down. We're much better off. I've actually gone with something more like a film industry model, where we keep a very small leadership core. We have a huge international freelance network. We know great people. We'll bring in the right graphics person. We'll have Jeff McFetrich for a mural here, but we won't want him on staff. Jeff's doing stuff. So we basically, in the film industry model, we realized we're better off just always having a conversation with our client, not saying what we think we are, and letting them tell us what they would like to hear from us. And then we're very successful. But my failures have been like, hey, I know, here's exactly what we do. We're going to do this for you. And they're like, oh, I thought you were this thing over here that we really need. Well, end of conversation. So those are my failures, is when I think I know what I'm doing. My successes are when I'm a good listener and I'm like, what do you think we do? How can I be part of your conversation?
Totally. I know we experienced a little bit of that at TechCrunch, though it's like very far from a lot of these brands. A few years ago, the whole shift was like, video is the future. And we're like, okay, I guess we'll like figure that out. And we started just like producing tons of videos, but they were things that worked really well as articles, as text, where it was like an interview or something, where it's like, if you want to skim through that interview to the parts that you like, you could, but they weren't super visual. They weren't actually like video content. They were more like text content ported into video. And those just didn't perform well. Like, nobody wants to see some like pasty guy talk about, copyright protection for music for like 20 minutes in like a drab room. Like, it's a thing that like you might skim through and be like, oh, I got some real insights out of that, but you don't want to watch it forever. And like, we really followed the trend rather than knowing what our true identity was, which was more about like breaking news, finding like newer startups that really matter rather than like these more experienced talking heads. And we've finally started to like shift back in that direction. And it's like, knowing when there's a trend that's not for you can be really important as well. Yeah.
That's a great point. Retweet.
Awesome. Thanks. So I want to talk, David, a little bit about your business, because it's very specific, because it's like heavily regulated. So I want to get a show of hands. First of all, I want everyone to close their eyes except me. So first of all, if everyone could close your eyes, this is how we're going to do anonymity. We're going to have an anonymous survey, but Who here has either a marijuana prescription or has purchased it legally in one of the legal recreational states? Okay, that's like a pretty large number of people, which is awesome. And then finally, what is your preferred way of buying? If you have, whether you have a prescription or not, whether you buy it legally or not, what is your preferred way of buying it? Is it going to be going into a retail dispensary, getting a dispensary or like delivery service or logistics provider like Meadow to deliver it to you, or is it like going to an independent dealer? So maybe let's raise of hands for like retail dispensary. Great. For delivery and for like independent dealer stuff. Yeah, that is okay. Great. All right, everyone can open their eyes. Thank you for all experiencing that like moment of surrealism with me, where it's as if we all aren't like nudge, nudge, wink, winking each other. But yeah, the real results of it were probably about half the people here have purchased marijuana legally, and I think that really means the stigma is lifting. Like we are really seeing a shift away from that, and I think brands are going to have to recognize that it's not something that's like toxic and radioactive the same way it used to be. And similarly, we're definitely seeing like the independent like dealer scene is just being decimated by the legal scene, and we're seeing a lot of people shifting towards those delivery services because it's like they're getting so fast, and the lifetime value of a customer in this business is so high that like really satisfying them up front with like, sub 30-minute delivery means you might be like making, $50 or $100 off of them a week for like years to come. So there's a lot of opportunity there. So David, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about how do you work with other brands? Because we've seen this massive trend in co-creation and co-promotion in social content. If you guys remember Vine before Vine died, there was this thing where there was an oligarchy of the top creators, and they all actually lived in LA. Some of them all lived in a big apartment building, and they would all guest star in each other's videos. And what they did by doing that was that they would then suddenly, like, instead of having like a random extra who didn't really know what they were doing, like the extras and the other actors in everybody's little videos were really well talented, but also they would all promote each other's videos. And what they did was this whole pack of them rose above everybody else and kept growing because of this co-creation. So I want to hear, because marijuana is something that like goes with so many things, it's like in Half Baked, it's like, you ever gone swimming on weed? Or it's like, you ever gone to an outdoor trading post conference on weed? It's like it just matches with a lot of things. So I want to hear your perspective on like how you guys are embracing that idea of co-promotion and co-creation, and are brands like warming up to that idea?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys have been to any of the cannabis conferences or cups or anything like that. Some have. I think you'll see a lot of the brands actually have a booth and a demo. In dispensaries, they have demos as well, where you get to have samples. I don't think that's happening next year because of the regulations. But where Meadow stands, it's really aligning with the dispensaries that then carry all these different brands. And for us, wide selection is really important. If you go on Meadow, you could literally pick from a few hundred different strains. You could pick from hundreds of edibles, and different ways of consuming and medicating, because everyone has different needs and wants. So you're starting to see through social media, Instagram accounts or Facebook accounts, if they're not shut down, layer in those experiences of their product with specific things. So I think word of mouth is really important. I think the social aspects of it is really important. How Meadow saves them time, allows them to go enjoy what it is that they're doing.
What about like interaction with like bigger non-marijuana related brands like Doritos or Taco Bell?
I was going to ask about
like,
the Netflix marijuana series.
Yeah, exactly. Things like that.
Well, we haven't actually gotten too into it. We've had more like artists approach us that are looking at creating their own brands of cannabis. But we haven't had the big, CPG brands come out at all yet.
Do you think that's something that you're going to see more of, especially like maybe the more independent brands? It's like, I don't think Coke is coming on board, but maybe like LaCroix or...
I think the environment that we're in right now, it's touchy, right? Like with the federal government, with banking, there's just a lot of stuff. Cannabis is still it's growing, and it will become pretty large. I don't see a lot of these bigger brands taking a risk on it. I do see these brands working with influencers and just say, hey, here's some LaCroix, post a picture. If they integrate that with cannabis, it's kind of like, well, I didn't make it. Those are some of the tactics that are being rolled out. But I think get on early is a good idea.
I mean, we
Yeah.
had,
I want to know who's going to like land that Live Nation sponsorship and just like have the the little booth
Like I said,
right
we're meeting
next
up
to
back
the
in like
beer
35
booth.
minutes. We're going to solve the world's problems.
Yes.
I'm jumping there real quick too. I mean, talking about you're saying pairing artists, artists wanting to create their own strand, etc. I think parlaying that further into music, it's like when you pair artists with specific brands, it has to come from again that authenticity and that passion that said artist has for a brand or a type of lifestyle, and translating that across content, or maybe it's a tour activation kind of piece. But that's just something interesting that I found in music is that again, much like a tent pole activation, it also transcends into the artists and their music and their fan base and kind of what that means. And if a fan of an artist, like if Taylor Swift all of a sudden had a strand of weed, I'm not sure her fans would buy it. Honestly, I mean, they might try it because it's Taylor Swift, but I'm saying it's not an authentic type of
That dank
that
Swift.
too.
So for our final question, I want to talk a little bit about that on-demand, like I want it now culture that we're seeing, from both things like Uber and Uber Eats and Postmates, but also like one-click buying through things like Amazon, where you're taking a lot of that. Maybe you are taking the experience out of it, and instead you're just simplifying the commerce down to something that feels almost invisible and like a totally natural part of your experience. So I'd love to hear a little bit about how the actual brands are and REI and Meadow, how you guys are adapting to that, but also how the rest of you guys are helping brands to appear that way at least, or embody some of that sense of instant gratification, even if they whether or not they're great at that just yet.
I mean, this is kind of an answer for this question and the sort of mistake question as well. But I think we always looked at Amazon as sort of like this, not necessarily the best customer experience, but they would ship things to you really quick, and there's obvious like value in it. And so I think we stayed away as an agency from doing a lot of like Amazon-based marketing, even with stats like 40% of all product-based searches, product-based queries online like go through Amazon at some point, like Amazon some touch point along the way. We sort of stayed away from it, and I think we are now actively sort of pursuing helping brands figure out their Amazon world, because it's just a reality. And so that's something I think we wish we did a little sooner, but we are going after. But on like a personal level, again, I try to stay away from Amazon just because it hurts small stores, and I don't particularly love the experience, and it's not necessarily for me. And there was a time when I needed to get like 5 different things, and I needed them to be delivered, or I needed them in like 2 days. I had very little time, and I would have had to drive to 5 different stores across the town, like 2 hours of driving to get it done. And I ordered them all on Amazon, and they were there in like 2 days. And I just remember thinking that was sort of my like come to Jesus point.
That's my
Wow.
oh shit, I better get on board. Get down and lay down.
for whatever downsides there are, like that's amazing, So I think that's one of the things that we end up trying to figure out for brands, like what is your Amazon world, even if it's not something you're in love with, like it's something you have to approach.
Well, I want to jump in on that and echo something Elizabeth said, getting toward the politics. I mean, it's a period of huge cultural dissonance. I mean, that's really what we're all feeling. And the elephant in the room, literally the Republican organization, if you will, is scaring a lot of people. I mean, and so you can't make your next move. That affects what I do. Amazon's disrupting, although arguably the way we were shopping was just this part of this consumer capitalism, was shopping as entertainment. I'm glad to see that crash. I think Amazon's a leader in questioning all the assumptions, which I endorse, but I don't think it's the end all. I think everyone's going to listen to that. I think what'll be interesting is how we all adjust to the post-consumer entertainment reality. So I think the efficiencies on getting stuff and all that is good. and it favors our game in a way, because then experience is detached and you can feature that and not worry so much about the mechanics. But cultural dissonance, that's the big deal in all this, whether it's political or the way that our lifestyle is changing.
I'm suddenly getting these flashbacks of like 4 years ago when I was working with the music industry around streaming, and there was a lot of cultural dissonance about like Spotify and what would eventually be Apple Music coming about, where artists were like, my music is worth things. I don't want to give it away for free. Why should I like empower these giant brands to be my distributors? You know, they don't pay me enough. They're robbing me of my music. Like, and honestly, I really worried for and advised against that perspective for a lot of those artists, because the fact is that these, you know, the services were providing a much more convenient way to listen to music, and these artists were mistaking the idea that, oh, I need to like own that customer relationship entirely in order to make any money off of it, because they were thinking very myopically of like just selling the music, when in reality most of their money was coming from touring and merchandise, and they weren't seeing it, which I think a lot of them have since warmed up to, the idea that like, oh, Spotify is like my best promoter. Like they are the place where I turn somebody who heard my radio single into somebody who's like listened to my album 10 times and is coming to my concert and is buying my t-shirt. And so I wonder what's going to end up happening with Amazon in that same respect. Are people going to like continue to fight it until it's just like too big and they have to get on board at the last minute? Or are they going to say like, okay, if this is the way the future is going, like I'm going to try to do this the best I can while still retaining like my own identity in some way, and starting, you know, having my own channels of distribution. And I think that might end up being more fruitful, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion about that.
Yeah, I'll speak. So for REI, I mean, it's interesting to study the correlation between digital sales and physical when people actually go to a store. And 90% of our digital sales are within 25 miles of one of our built stores. So there's a huge connection between a physical expression and a digital customer.
So do you think does that mean that like people are just choosing not to go to the store and just buying online, or are they like showrooming in the store and then going home and buying online?
Well, they do both. We don't. There's our members, from what we're doing a lot of research on, do both. They buy in store and they buy online. Even though our online sales are growing at a much rapid pace than our built store sales, but we have to have both of them. And I think for us, we're really figuring out, like, you know, we started, like I said, by getting gear for our friends, but now you can get gear anywhere. I mean, everybody sells gear. You can get it anywhere. So we're really going, you know, our direction that we're exploring, and I'm not going to say it's like a strategic direction at this point, but we're exploring is totally getting away from retail. Still having a retail base, but having our own festivals, buying campgrounds, having activity centers, having boathouses, having experiences that we outfit you and you come and you create them and we are there for you, and that's the area that we're really moving in. And it's more like a connection between, if we own this campground and we have a store within 50 miles, we kind of have them both. I think one thing about Amazon is they can't, if we own the land, they can't do anything about it. But if we make an app, they can certainly copy it. So which they'll do. So
that's really wise.
Yeah. I mean, they'll just, any kind of functionality that we create, they're just going to copy it and take it and do it a hell of a lot better than we can. So we're just going to, our direction that we're exploring is going this entire other way, where we outfit people and we get them out there and we own the property and they stay with us and we have the whole experience for them.
That's an excellent point. And I think to transcend that into music, and going off the example Josh used for Spotify, it's like utilizing that through line and touching the consumer in all of the ways that they're experiencing your brand or your artist or whatever that is. I mean, sure, I may hear my favorite artist on a Spotify playlist, but then all of a sudden I see an ad, you know, or I hear an ad about their concert coming up, and then I'm on Facebook, and all of a sudden, and my friend just liked their Facebook page or whatever that is. But that's a great point. Just that continuity and touching the consumer every place you can, whether it's a brand or if it's music.
Some of the things that some of the brands we work with have done to kind of do Amazon but also keep their business alive is, thriving, is to maybe only sell Amazon a handful of SKUs and then have these, special colorways or collaborations or, wider ranges of sizes and colors online, and, be able to provide. So Amazon isn't necessarily selling everything, but they're selling like the most popular pieces. So I do think that there's ways to, it's not like you're either all in or you're all out. I think, you can still be on a platform like that and not fight it so hard, but still have your site be the quintessential place where people want to go and experience your brand and understand kind of the true kind of the feeling and get the original information, product specs, etc.
Yeah, one of the things that we do at Meadow, so we build software for the dispensaries. So besides delivery, bud tenders, the staff of the dispensary uses our software as patients come in and order. So for us, we've done a lot to build those tools for those bud tenders. They're the front of the line. And so when a patient comes in and checks in through Meadow, that bud tender is able to see, what they bought and how to service them. So by the time they even get to the counter, they're already like, hey, how's it going? How was that Jackarare that you had last time? How did it treat you? Did you want something else? Do you want to double down on that? Coupled with a loyalty program and a bunch of other things, you end up creating more lock-in long term. And I think that's where that customer experience is dialed in and connected with the brand and the bud tender and the person serving the patient.
That's something we do at G7 exactly, is help connect those dots, right? So if we see a brand or if we see an artist doing several different things, it's like, cool, let's come in and help be that strategy partner and connect those dots so everything makes sense.
Great. So just to quickly run over some of the amazing insights that we've gotten from our awesome panelists, when we originally surveyed you guys, we found that traditional media is not really having the same effect that it once did, and people are more interested in like product and experience-based marketing. That can be awesome things like empowering your actual employees to be happy and full of morale for your company, because that's going to let them tell the stories that really sell your brand, like being closed on Black Friday without opt-outside with REI. And whether that can also be consistent and being like a constant part of an experience year after year, like some brands are doing with music festivals. But you also have to start with the experience rather than starting with how are you going to sell things. Start with the experience of where people are going to want to be, and they're going to end up buying things while they're there. And you also have to prioritize that uniqueness. Like, you want to be something that people haven't ever done before, because that's what they're going to tell their friends about. That's what they're going to end up taking photos of and sharing. When we asked you guys about what values or things you really cared about in a commerce experience, fast shipping, an intuitive design of a store or of site, and having great recommendations and customer service were really important. And kind of surprisingly, price and selection are going down, because I think in the end, people say, I want to find what's the best. I want great curation, and I'm going to pay what you ask for if you can show me the best thing that I want, rather than overwhelming me with too many choices and me having that decision paralysis of not knowing which one to actually pick. When you're doing that experiential marketing, providing some kind of service that aligns with your brand but doesn't necessarily have to be just dead on the same with it can be super powerful, whether that's offering hair washes or shuttle rides at a music festival or something else. But also at the same time, you have to make sure that the salespeople love what they do. Like you said with REI, it only works when you actually hire people who aren't just great at sales but are great at loving your product, because they're gonna that love transfers through osmosis to the customers. And you have to stick with that unique identity. You can't constantly chase the new trends if they don't work for you. You have to find the ones that actually do align with your identity. With marijuana, there's an awesome opportunity because there's this massive destigmatization. More and more people are saying that it's fine and they're cool with it, and they wouldn't really hate on brands for doing it. But at the same time, a lot of those mainstream brands are not adopting it yet. So I think there's a great opportunity there if someone can figure out how to manage that backlash. In terms of that on-demandification and Amazon situation, people sometimes wrote off Amazon early, saying like, oh, we don't really want to be a part of it. They're going to cannibalize our business. But it's really getting to the point that they're getting so big that you have to have some strategy. Maybe that's not selling everything and removing yourself from the equation, but trying to understand that this is going to be a sizable force, and whether it's through on-demand, easy access to your products, or through putting some of your stuff on something like Amazon, can really give you a new touch point to reach people and use that as a wedge to open up a wider relationship with people. And there is obviously going to be that cultural dissonance. People are going to have a strong reactions about it, but I think it's about thinking about it as logically and long-term as possible, rather than thinking of it as like a personal affront where they're trying to steal the dollars out of your cash register. As you can start to get the products everywhere, as access becomes easier because of things about like online and online distribution, you really have to think about like, what is it that matters about your brand? What is different about you, and how can you fight offline and fight in a way that only you can do? Because I think if you can find a way to be yourself and find what makes your brand that Amazon can't do, you'll make sales by making memories. And I think that's what we're making here this weekend. So thank you guys all for coming, and thank you to the panelists. We'll be available afterwards for questions, but I want to make sure you guys can get to your awesome next activities. So thank you very much, and thank you to Outpost.